Resources podcast, Stay at Home edition, unfortunately, virtually. My name is Mike Ciavolino. I'm president of the Jersey Shore Association of HR. Proud to be joined today by our guest, Lina Graves from CultureConnext. And before we introduce Lina, I would like to introduce my co-hosts on today's show. So starting with Bob Kane, if you want to just quickly introduce yourself, and then we'll go to Liz and Chrstine.
Okay, thanks, Mike. My name is Bob Kane. I am a board member at Jersey Shore Association of HR, and I am a partner in Training Unlimited, which is a training and human resource consulting firm based in Monmouth County. So thank you, and it's nice to see all of you today.
Thanks, Bob.
Hi, everyone. Liz Rizzolo. I am just recently SHRM certified in February. Woohoo! Yay! Right?
Yeah.
Part of the SHORE chapter of Human Resources, and I am a recruiter by trade. And I just had a call this morning where I am. I got laid off back in January, so I just got another job today. So it's really exciting in the coronavirus world.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
That's great.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Fabulous. Thank you.
Great. My name is Chrstine Dyckman. I am also SHRM certified and part of the board for Jersey Shore. In addition, I am the employment counselor and in-house trainer for Monmouth County Workforce Development, where we do training and certification. And I am a host of Zoom webinars as well as workshops. I am so interested and excited about Lina talking today and giving us her input on what's going on with COVID-19 and everything. So very good.
Thanks, everyone. I mean, it would be amazing, talking to my fellow board members here, to have Lina come and speak to our, 80 to 100 plus breakfast meetings, because she just has so much valuable information to impart. But we're super pleased to be able to offer it, at least in this format. And so the title of our podcast this morning is Communicating Effectively with Your Employees During the Coronavirus. Now, as we all know, companies all around the world right now are working around the clock to adjust to this sort of new normal as we quickly learn to navigate the coronavirus pandemic. So our guest today has served as a human resources leader for nearly 20 years. Early in her career, she founded a consulting agency, ISE Group, where she provided organizations with human resources support with a dynamic focus on workplace culture. In 2011, she decided to join one of the largest post-acute providers of healthcare in the country, Genesis Healthcare, and as a human resources leader for Genesis, she spent 7 years focused on a leading team of HR professionals in providing the highest level of service to nearly 24,000 employees. She is now the president and CEO of an organization called CultureConnext. I'm going to let her tell all about the fabulous work she does. And she's also planning a conference at the end of October in Florida, where Johnny Taylor will be as part of the keynote speaker or the keynote speaker. So it is truly our pleasure to welcome to the show Ms. Lina Graves, CultureConnext. Good morning, Lina.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mike. Thank you so much for having me. What an exciting opportunity. This is the time where we need to be having these conversations. There is so much going on right now. There is so much stress going on out there. So it is my absolute pleasure to be able to join you guys and talk about all things HR related, but more importantly, not so much focused on the technical side of HR at this point in time, but the human factor of HR at this point in time, because that's what we're talking about. There's a lot going on in our world. People are feeling this stress, and I think that we need to be having these conversations about how we can create more compassionate communication and how can we be better understanding of how our people are feeling during a time of crisis. And I think in addition to all of that, anyone that I work with, I keep saying this to any organization that I consult with, how you handle your employees and how they feel and how pressing you are for them during a time of crisis like this is going to shape who you are as an organization in the future. They will definitely remember how you make them feel during this time. And it doesn't mean that we don't, it's not about not laying people off or this or that. We realize that it has to happen. It's part of what's going on right now, but it's about how compassionate you are during times of crisis that are going to make a difference in what your company is going to look like in the future.
Well, that's a super powerful message. And, you know, our audience is primarily HR directors, HR leaders, HR managers, and practitioners. So they'll be very dialed into your message this morning. And I think, you know, right out of the chute, you know, with all the fear and anxiety that you just spoke about, you know, how can senior leadership teams, including ethics and compliance officers, sort of do their part to help maintain a sense of normalcy in this crazy virtual workplace that we're in now?
Absolutely. I think two things come to mind when we talk about this: communication and transparency, right? And when I say communication, I think that we're all sort of in this world where everything that we're communicating has to be COVID related. And so that creates more anxiety, right? We know that our people are hearing all things COVID 24/7 through social media, through the news, through every venue. There isn't a day or a minute that you go by and you don't hear the word COVID-19. So I think that leaders, compliance people, ethics people need to focus their attention on how to communicate the information that's necessary for your employees as it relates to the crisis, but also what other things are going on within the organization. Try to continue to push your business forward during this time, because it is true that they are hearing all the other unfortunate negative stuff that's going on from every other source that they have. You know, I haven't had a conversation with anyone, virtually or not, that doesn't have the word COVID in it, right? And we realize that we have to do that. But I think that if companies take it upon themselves to continue pushing their business forward and also talk about, hey, this is what's going on with our business, and also share some of the positive stuff, because it is true that there are a lot of positive things that are occurring right now as companies are learning how to live this virtual world that we were so apprehensive about living in just a couple months ago.
That's great. Thank you. How can companies sort of flip the conversation a little bit of the fear and unease, and how do they sort of embrace their values or bring their values to the table in this time?
You know, it's so interesting that we talk about values during this time, because the truth is that we're all busy, right? Everybody's got their agenda and things going on. And I don't think that organizations review their values all that often with their team members. In fact, when I've done some consultant work, often I would ask that question about a random team member of what are the values of your company, and they know where the board is at the front, where they can go and read it, but they don't really know what they are. And so I think this is a perfect opportunity to embrace those values, but not just embrace them, but communicate them, and making sure that your employees actually do know what those values are. We all, even though we're crazy busy in a virtual world, we all have a little extra time right now to focus our attention on things that normally we don't have the time to focus our attention on. And I would encourage every organization out there to, pull those quote unquote values off the wall and bring them into every conversation that they're having with their team members, because it's going to bring that light to the conversation that they're having. This is what our company was founded on. This is what we promised that we were going to do, whether it's compassion, whatever it might be on that board. It reminds people of how to behave on a daily basis, whether it's virtually or in person. And then it reminds them of what they're there to do, because it's so easy to forget about that. You read it during your onboarding process, and likely it's rare that leaders utilize their core values as a piece of communication on a regular basis. So if we start embracing that today, but not only today, when we go from here, we realize that, you know what? Maybe every meeting that we have, or at least every other meeting that we have, we'll talk about our values. We spend a solid 15, 30 minutes talking about what are our values of our company, so it remains fresh on our employees' minds. It changes the positive from all negative to something, the conversation from all negative to something more positive.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So if we were in the same room, I would do a visual cue to one of my colleagues to ask the next question. But since we are all in our snug in our living rooms, I will throw it to Chrstine Dyckman.
Thank you very much, Mike. Lina, I'm very curious. There's you talk on a broader spectrum. We have a lot of businesses that are smaller. They're mom and pop. They're worried about staying in business now and getting back to the new normal when we're released from stay-at-home orders. So do they have those same goals as you just talked about, as far as values, value board, the reminder of why we're even here or in business, showing compassion when you're talking about a 4-person operation or a 20-person operation or a 1,000-person operation? Does that differ?
That is such a great question. And this is actually something that when we talk about the conference later, touching at a large scale at the conference, we're talking about this, but it certainly is not exactly the same, right? Those companies that may have the resources to do different things will be able to do things. And I think the smaller organizations, clearly you still want to have those values and you still want to hold on to that, but you're also holding on to stay afloat, to stay in business. And I think one of the things that I've coached some of the smaller business, and even one of the things that I've been doing here in my community, is how can we collectively get creative to help these businesses stay afloat, right? So I'll give you an example of what we've done with small businesses in here. They're trying, you know, they're communicating with their employees. They're heartbroken about the fact that their employees are completely out of work. And, you know, we all know unemployment has been a hot mess all over the country and all of that stuff. So they're really struggling. So for an organization with a 10 people team, perhaps to sit down and talk about values may not be the best use of their time, but having that baseline, sitting down and having a conversation about how can we get out there? How can we have our community help us stay afloat? And so what we started doing here in our community, which I absolutely love, we all started buying gift certificates from our local restaurants that are currently closed. And everything that we're given to people for a birthday or for anything is a gift certificate to a restaurant that they can use at a later time or now, because they're open. You know, I'm using restaurants as an example, but because they're open for that type of business. And so as a community, that's just one single example. But if you can come up with creative ideas and how to help those businesses, I think it's important that if I was talking directly to the business owners, I think it's important for them to reach out to their communities and see what their community support looks like. You know, some of the things that we did, we said there are people in need, people who are out of work in restaurants or other businesses who are suffering. So one of the things that we did, we collected a bunch of money from donations, and then we went and prepaid for meals for people in need. So then now we're benefiting two groups of people, the people who need a meal and the restaurant who's potentially facing going out of business. And again, I keep going back to restaurant because they're largely affected, but it really is about creativity. And I can tell you that creativity needs to come from a collective group of people, a group of a small restaurant. And I used to be a restaurant owner myself about 10 years ago, amongst all the other things I've done. A group of 10 people, we may not have all those ideas, or it might not feel comfortable to reach out. But if you bring communities of people together, that's the best use of their time right now that they have a little time. Bring their community. Their community don't want to see those restaurants or those businesses go out of business. Bring their communities in and see how they can help. And yeah, we'll definitely touch about this a little more when we talk about the conference, because there's a lot more about that.
Some great ideas. Thank you so much, Lina.
Okay, so HR has played a huge role in COVID-19, right? I think uncharted territories where people are scared, people are fearful. You know, some people might not want to go back to work, you know, when the time is right, they might want to work from home. So how do you think, you know, what is the best way for human resources and even leaders of companies on how to effectively communicate and what they should be communicating to their employees? Should they be transparent? You know, they have to kind of be therapists. They have to also be business minded and make sure people are still doing the work that they need to do. So it's a lot. So what is your suggestions on how and what they should be communicating to keep their employees feeling safe and valued in this crazy time?
Absolutely. I think this is a very important time for all of us as HR professionals to be very compassionate in the way that we communicate. I know the HR community is struggling. I know that we go to bed every night thinking, did I do that right? Did I apply the proper law? Did I apply the proper code to this leave? I have no idea what's going on. And so what I would encourage our HR professionals is, you know, we are comfortable by default. We are comfortable in the box, right? We are comfortable in the things that we can read on the book and we can put a check mark on. What I'm going to encourage my HR professionals during this crisis is to be able to step outside of that box a little bit and to it's okay to mess up right now. But the thing that we need to keep in mind is that people are our most critical resources at this point in time, and that we need to be compassionate in the way that we communicate, and that we also are struggling. You know, we're all in this crisis together. So this is not a crisis that doesn't affect the HR professionals. We're also stressed out what's happening with our families, what's happening in this world. So the biggest piece of all of this is, yes, it is important that we learn everything as it relates to the new employment laws that have passed as a result of this, and have the technical knowledge that we need to have during this time. But it's even more critical that we put compassion at the front of everything that we do and how we communicate with people, because we can figure it out. One way I've always coached HR professionals to do this, and I do this whether it's crisis or not, we should be able to make the technical side of our jobs invisible. And what I mean by that is, this is kind of what we do behind the scenes. This is what we know, you know, certified professionals, we know our employment laws. I mean, I can tell you the SHRM and HRCI books left and right and front to back and all of that. But at the end of the day, do our people really care about that? No, they just care that they know that we by default are doing the right thing. They just care about how we communicate with them. So I think that I keep repeating this, that compassion needs to be at the forefront of everything that we do, because our people need us to be there for them right now. And the other thing that I would encourage HR professionals to do is to reach out for help when we are accustomed to knowing everything, because we spend years studying all of this information, and now we have to learn all of this stuff in a matter of a couple of days. It's okay to reach out. It's okay to tell your people, you know what, I'm not sure I'm not sure what's going to happen here, but let me try to figure it out. And if we mess up, it's okay. It's perfectly okay. We need to take that burden of ourselves, because the only way that we can be good for our employees is when we're taking good care of our mental health as it relates to being in moments of crisis. And that way we can then be compassionate and able to communicate. I have some HR people who come to me and said, I'm done. I don't think I want to do HR anymore. And that just breaks my heart, but I understand the reason for it. It's a lot of stress that's going on through that HR person's mind, thinking that I need to know everything right now. And the truth is that you don't. There is multiple resources out there. We live in a technical world where we can pretty much Google anything and find it. So don't worry yourself about having to memorize A through Z, everything that relates to employment laws. Worry about how you're taking care of your people, and then things are going to take care of themselves from there.
Wow, that is so true. You know, I heard on a TV news show the other day where someone compared what we're currently going through to a hurricane happening or a natural disaster in 50 states all at the same time. So I think your point there about just being honest, we don't have all the answers, but together, you know, we're on the same team, so we can figure this out. And you're so right about the transparency aspect of it. So, you know, thank you for that. So what are some of the things that employers should be communicating to their employees right now?
I think employers need to certainly communicate and provide updates as it relates to the crisis, because we can't just pretend like it's not happening, right? We need to communicate in an organized manner the information that affects their particular business. It doesn't make sense to communicate everything, because not every business is affected in the same way. So communicate things that relate to the crisis as it relates to your business, but then also communicate business plans. What plans of business continuity do you have? People are stressed out about losing their jobs and their companies going out of business. And if you have a good continuity plan, communicate that to your team members. You know, historically, sometimes we're tight with information because we feel like we have to have it perfect before we let it out. But this is the time where people need that light of hope, where you can say, okay, you know, over the next, we don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows. The good news is that nobody knows what's going to happen next week, right? It's all changing by the minute. But if companies communicate to their employees what their continuity plans are, then that brings them that hope. And also communicate to the employees what things you are doing to take care of them, what things you are doing to take care of the business. How are you sourcing different opportunities such as loans and that kind of stuff? Provide people with highlights of what the company's doing, what the leaders are doing to make sure that everyone is staying employed, if in fact those people are employed, or for those who have been furloughed or layoff, communicate to them that you are working diligently to make sure that you can bring them back to work as soon as possible. And I think that when you communicate with transparency and you let your people know what your plans are, it definitely gives them hope. And that's what we all need right now. I think everybody is in this big time where during this time, we all just need to hear the ray of hope. Even the different states talking about opening different businesses and all of that is bringing some hope. We're scared about it, but it's bringing some hope to it. And so people being able to receive that information and understanding how the companies are operating and how they're planning for the future is critically important.
I see that some people that are higher up in leadership are very curt, and they're not wanting to be compassionate with employees. They're like thinking of the bottom line. Again, how do I stay in business? How do I maintain sales, let alone increase sales during this time? And they're looking at HR to have all the answers. And the employees are also looking at HR to have all the answers. So we're kind of like stuck in the middle of want to make the leadership team happy, but want to make the employees happy. And you're walking that fine line. How do you get leadership to buy into taking care of your employees first and everything will come along? How do you get leadership team to understand the ethics and the compassion that needs to go into what is happening right now to be able to move forward? What do you say?
That's a great question. HR has always been at the center of that sandwich, right?
Yeah.
right in the middle of all of this.
A certain kind of sandwich that we can't say.
How do we make it happen? Listen, I think that the truth is that there are going to be some leaders out there who are not going to focus on culture and people as it relates to a crisis, or sometimes as it relates to anything in the business. And what I will publicly say to those leaders is, you will be the people who are not going to survive. Push your people, drive your business. Yeah. What I would say to the HR professionals out there, don't be afraid. You need to claim your seat at the table. A lot of people tell me, how did you make it from, entry-level HR person to the position that you have today? Because I always claim my seat at the table. I have no fear in going to my CEO and saying, that's not right. And it's not about telling somebody, don't do this. It's about providing alternative and coaching people in how there are better ways to handle particular situations. So it's not about where the person with the last word. Is about being that person that collaborates with people and explains the why as to why we need to take care of our people during this point in time. Because the truth is that obviously we hear over 30 million people have filed for unemployment. There is a tremendous crisis going on right now. And people might be proud saying, if they leave, who cares? There's 30 million people unemployed right now. We can find people. I can tell you that it's going to be a lot more difficult for us to recruit. Even though the mentality might be that more unemployed people makes it easier, you're going to have, it's like a needle in the haystack now. Before you only had 5 qualified candidates, you have to pick out of 5. Now you have 30 million, across the different industries. So I think that being able to feel comfortable as an HR professional to go up to your CEO and share the details why you feel a certain way about a particular situation is critically important. What I will tell you is also, as a CEO and an HR person, CEOs also want to know facts. The truth is that historically, as HR professionals, and I'll raise my hand because I've been one of them, sometimes we don't provide enough information as to why we feel like something needs to happen. So as much as the CEOs, so the leaders might be apprehensive to that, and we need to claim that seat at the table, and we need to share the why, we need to provide detailed information. We can't just go to our CEO and say, hey, I want to do this because I think it would be really nice for our company. The truth is that it probably would be really nice, but you know what? Those are the people who need to drive the business and keep the business afloat. So they need more than just, I want to do it because I think it would be nice. So I think if our HR professionals equip themselves with the proper information as to why we need to care for our people, and we need to make sure that culture stays at the forefront of everything that we do during a crisis or whatever situation you have, and you equip yourself with the proper information, is very difficult for people to tell. I worked for a CEO who one day we were having a conversation and he was very honest with me, and I love this. He flat out said, he's like, yeah, you know what? I'm just not a fan of HR people because I just feel like we get in trouble every time we tell HR something. I loved his honesty, and it took building a relationship for him to get to that point. And he also said, I always feel like we're just going to be told, no, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. And this is where we need to utilize the skill set that we have. We've learned a ton of stuff, but this is where we need to utilize the skill set and get out of that box and say, okay, here is how we can collaborate. Here is how we can do this. And the one thing that as HR professionals, we all need to master is how, and I'm sure you guys are very familiar with this, how get other people to buy into whatever your idea is, but making them think it's their idea all along. If you can do that, you can get buy-in from anybody, because we don't care about getting the credit, right? As HR professionals, we just want to do the right thing. We don't care about getting the credit. That's one of the skills that I would say as an HR professional I learned and mastered over the years. Is like, it's awesome. I can't believe you're so excited to be doing this. And this is such a great idea. And then before you know, they think and that's fine. I'm okay with that, because then you're getting that buy-in from people. It's not a trick. It's just mastering a particular skill set to get buy-in from people. And I think that would make a difference. But number one is have your information, not just providing, yeah, we should do this because I think they'll be next.
Thank you. Hey, Bob, you have a question?
I do. I guess my question is, how do we get people prepared for what they're calling the new normal? They're saying, maybe it's staggered work hours. We're going to have to rearrange offices in terms of how the layout is. Cafeterias have to be rearranged. Team meetings are probably not going to be in person anymore. It's all that, how to get people ready for the new workplace. And I've been reading a lot about that, and that seems to be scaring people because they're like, we only have so much space.
Right.
How do we get people to do staggered hours? Those type of things. So how do we plan to communicate to the employees this is the new normal, so to speak?
Yeah, so I think that number one, each business needs to look at their particular environment and their particular line of business, how this is going to apply to them. They need to prepare for how is this going to affect me personally, right? So once you have that plan in place, then you start looking at, the truth is that we've been caught up on the fact that business hours need to be Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And that's not, we've proven that that's not it. We've proven through this whole crisis that flexibility is possible, that we don't have to be enclosed in the window. Believe it or not, there are people that would prefer to work on a Saturday rather than a Monday. There's just a lot of different things. So I would say the business needs to look at their environment, they need to look at their space, and they need to look at their business and see how that is going to work for them. And then the one thing I would encourage for people to do during this time, don't go at it alone. Reach to your employees, do some surveys, get data from what your people want, because one of the things that we often as leaders fail to do is to receive that information, and we just assume that people want to work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. We just assume that they prefer being in the office versus virtually, or we just assume that they prefer being virtually versus in the office. Not everybody wants to be a virtual person. Just assume that people don't want to work on the weekends. We just make all those assumptions. And I think that if we come up with some form of survey of where you people stand, and you have to have a baseline to it. This is what we're thinking. This is what would work for our business model. And here are the different options. What would be the best option for you, and prioritize based on that. I think it would tremendously help the organization make a decision with the input of their employees. We live in a world where it's no longer, I'm the boss, I tell you what to do and you just do it because you're getting paid for it. We live in a world where people want to be able to have input, and we can't create a million different schedules, but we can certainly get a consensus of where most people stand and be able to make decisions based on that. And in addition to that, I go back to transparency, being able to communicate to your people that, you know what, when we go on the other end of this and we make those changes, we can pretend or assume that those changes are going to be permanent, because we are all going to learn what is going to work for us. And so we're going to do something that is extremely uncomfortable for most people. It's extremely uncomfortable for me because I'm a super planner. We're not going to be able for a little while have the long-term plan. This is going to be your schedule for the next 5 years. No, we're going to say, you know what, let's play this out and let's adjust as we need to. And if there is anything that I've personally learned from this crisis, is that flexibility factor of it. I don't have to have my whole life planned out right now, because guess what? There is that monkey wrench that got thrown into all of us, and all of those plans that we've had we don't even remember what they look like because they're out the window. So I think that being able to have that conversation of, we're going to give this a try. We know this is going to stress some people out. We're going to play with it for a little bit, and we're going to adjust as the time progresses, and we're going to with the intention of doing the best that we can for our people. And then we'll see what happens. And as we need to, we'll adjust and we revisit again.
And that monkey wrench is like 40 feet long.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. It's huge.
So I just want to back up for 1 second, and maybe you could tell our audience a little bit about CultureConnext, when you founded it, what your organization does, who's an ideal client for your company, and here's what I'm interested in: how did you help organizations previous to what we're going through now, and as opposed to what's happening with this nuttiness, this monkey wrench,
this giant monkey wrench. So CultureConnext, I would say that CultureConnext was founded in my heart many, many years ago, at least probably 8 to 10 years ago. And to be quite honest, because I'm a super planner, I didn't pull the trigger sooner because that fear of what if it doesn't work, what if this, what if that, it's nice to be able to have the full-time job and that quote unquote security blanket. So officially CultureConnext was founded last summer. And I had the opportunity because I was at a point where I was making a career change, and that career change included either going on to CultureConnext full-time and being fearful of what that's going to look like and the time that it's going to take to build, or going into another full-time big corporate opportunity and then just continue to push CultureConnext aside because something else came up. And amazingly enough, I had the opportunity to do both. I have the opportunity. I work for Herschel Properties based out of New York City, even though I live in Florida. And when I interview with them, one of the things they say, what can we do? We really want you to join us. I was going to consult with them, and they really wanted me to come on board full time. And they said, what can we do? And I said, there's only one thing that I want. And they thought I was just going to ask for an astronomical amount of money. And that was an end. Money doesn't drive me. It was, I have this business that I've been wanting to do for such a long time. And if you're okay with me openly doing this, and I promise you that you'll still get the full-time me, this is just my nighttime job. And if
side hustle,
I'm in. And they were like, okay, I guess you're in. I thought they were going to be like, oh, you're crazy. That's not going to work. So that's how CultureConnext happened. They gave me that opportunity, and it instantly filed the company and founded the company. And of course, it's been in progress. So I've had a lot of followers and a lot of people that I provided consultant services for that knew about me and about my services. So they've been reaching out since then, but officially it was last summer. And the way that I help organizations in terms of culture, it really is understanding what their culture is. I can tell you that as a consultant, I've gone into companies where I interview the leaders and I said, okay, what is the culture of your organization? And then it goes back to the bulletin board with the values and all of that stuff. Well, this is our culture. And then you go in and you interview and you solicit information from the employees, and sometimes they don't know anything about what sits on that board. And worse than that, they said that doesn't even represent at all who we are as a company. In some cases they do. In some cases they're way higher than what those standards are. So what I've done is really do what I call cultural temperature assessments. Just figure it out. What is the culture of your organization? Where you think you are, where your employees think you are, up or down, and where do you want to be? have things changed for you as a company since you created this, your values are always your values, but is there something that you can do to progress? And so once we identify that information on where they are, where they think they are, where their employees think that they are, and where they want to go, then I help them develop the roadmap to achieve those goals. And always with the mentality that culture isn't a short-term project. Culture is an ongoing way of behaving and communicating and how you talk to your people on a regular basis. And culture is not accepting the brilliant, what I call the brilliant jerks out there who, the best sales guy gets away with not treating people right because it's the best sales guy or girl or whatever.
But how often do you see that though, right? You probably see that like the top dog gets to treat everyone like, not an equal.
And then we say, well, that's just Lina. That's how Lina is. And so part of my job is to really get down to the foundation of that and put it very open and honest so that the other leaders see how that's truly impacting their company. And when you trickle down to that, and when you hear multiple people giving you that feedback, you can't help it but to sit back and say, ooh, okay, we really do have to address this. And the truth is that some companies decide that, you know what, we've been ignoring this problem was way too long and we have to address it. And some decide that they won't. And that's how, I'm there to bring light and to help them create that roadmap and how to reach those goals that they have. So that's what I do as a consultant. That's what I call my part-time gig. And then last but not least, and the conference is an event that I put together, recognizing the importance of bringing people together to talk about workplace culture. As you guys figure it out over the past however long I've been rambling.
You're not rambling.
Culture is a passion of mine, and so I attend many of the HR conferences. I'm a huge fan of Charm and partner with Johnny Taylor on a few projects and all of that. But I felt the need to bring people together to exclusively talk about culture that doesn't necessarily involve the things that perhaps impede in some cases accomplishing culture. It doesn't involve the technical side of HR. We all know it, and that's why I called it, make it invisible. We know what we have to do, let's do it. Let's not make that what's visual to other people. And that's what the CultureConnext conference came about, is scheduled hopefully in person. I don't know, it's for this fall, October in Orlando at the Gaylord Palms. But I just announced yesterday on my LinkedIn page that we have created a virtual option for the conference. And it's just such a good environment. It's going to be what we're doing largely in terms of helping people create those roadmaps. We're going to be having those conversations about what, we're going to do pre-conference assessments on what the culture of their companies are. And then we're going to present that to the different teams. And we're just going to be doing a lot of work as it relates to culture. And what's most exciting to me, different than other conferences, usually we go to conference and we get really pumped up and excited and we're ready to, but sometimes when we get back home or back to the office, reality hits. And then it's also like that deer in the headlight effect where I was like, oh, that's great information, but I don't know where to start. Or to the example that we were talking about earlier, you have a company with 50 employees, and then you have a speaker whose company has 80,000 employees, like the previous employer I worked for. And then you stand there and you talk about, well, this is, my team of 40 people is dedicated to the culture of the company. And then there is the person, the one department, one person, HR department saying, well, I would love to have all those tools, but I simply don't. So we created the conference to be specific to making sure that each type of business and business size has a good plan that they can take with them, a written plan that they can take with them, and how they are going to address or motivate or implement or continue the culture of the organization to reach to whatever goals they want to get to.
Fantastic.
I think that's very important. Just because most conferences are motivational and inspiring, and people are gung-ho and excited, and you're right, they get back to reality and they don't take action because they don't know what is that first step of their action, because maybe the speaker they heard or the, breakout that they went to is not conducive to their
Correct.
particular organization. So they don't know where to go. And having a roadmap is huge.
Yeah, if the information isn't relatable, then it makes it very difficult to be actionable. If I can't see myself in that position, and the good thing is that I sort of had that opportunity. I always worked for very large organizations prior to joining my current employer. Genesis had over 80,000 people and thousands and thousands of people. And so I could say I have this team of this many HR professionals doing this and that. And then now I work for a small company, less than 100 people. So I know we don't have those resources to do that. So that's really what was a huge light bulb for me as I attend many, many conferences, as I planned for my own, to know that I was one of those people who took all the booklets with me and I was super inspired and ready to go. But then when I got back, I couldn't translate that to my actions. What do I need to do? And that's why it was important for me as I put this event together to create those roadmaps that are easy for people to put them together. And then the breakout sessions that we're doing are going to be to the best of our ability, industry relatable, as well as company size. I think company size makes a huge difference in how people react or how they are able to put a task in place, because they can understand what each other's resources look like, the lack of resources that we have when we work for a small company. So those breakout sessions are going to be based on that. And my hope is that when people take those roadmaps with them to go back to work, they actually can go back and say, here we have a good starting point, and here is where we're going to go, and here's the roadmap. I'm sure there might be some deviations in between and some changes and tweaks that need to take place, but also being available for those people as CultureConnext consultant side of it to guide them if they hit a roadblock. So when people go to the conference, it's not just we went to the conference, we left, and we never heard back from those people. We're going to be like, hey, what's going on with your roadmap? Is it happening? Are you hitting any roadblocks, and can we help you in any way?
I just thinking back to a point you made a short time ago about the top dog in the organization, and they're, not nice to everyone else, or they have this other hierarchy they think they're on. And is there anything more illustrative of how foolish that is than the current situation where we see how much we rely on mail carriers, food processing workers, sanitation workers, every food, grocery store, everyone is so vital to everyone else. And to your point, nothing is really, to me, more, like I said, illustrative of that.
Yeah, I love that you share that, and that actually gives me chills, because that's one thing I'm very passionate about. I moved to the United States about 21 years ago. I know that because I was pregnant. My son is 21. So wow. 21 years ago, and I didn't speak English. I was single, I'm pregnant, $200 in my pocket. I had no idea what life was going to bring, right? And, I started working 3 jobs and doing whatever I could do to take care of my son. And, I had a plan on how, I wanted to do something with my life and be able to provide for my son. And one of the videos that I share on LinkedIn earlier, as it relates to job titles and how people idolize people based on the job title or income or the house or whatever they drive versus who they are as a person. And so the question I ask to people is like, if I told you guys that I was the overnight cleaning crew at McDonald's cleaning the toilets 20 years ago, would you treat me any different? And I'm still the same person. I have the same person. I've grown, I've learned, I've moved up with my career, but I'm still the same person who cares for other people. And so I hate the idea of people simply thinking that because someone has a job title, they deserve more or less respect from the other individuals in the organization. And that's one of the things that I drive on a regular basis with the companies that I work with, is that I greet every single individual when I walk through an office building. As I go to the bathroom and the people are cleaning the bathroom, I remember that being me. And not just because I remember it, but because every single individual deserves that same level of respect. And I say to people, I said, if you say hello to the CEO, just because you feel like he's the CEO and is the person that can fire me, but you don't say hello to the other people who are doing other work, then you're really idolizing titles, not really taking care of the people. And that's a hugely important thing for me personally.
I think that comes back to kind of what you said, about compassion. In this time, compassion is so big, but you should have it all the time for everybody, regardless of where they rank. In a time of change, particularly, we're all looking, how are we going to navigate this craziness? How are we going to be transparent, have empathy and compassion, and be flexible? I think it's a really good time for us to, every company, whether you 40 people or 40,000, is to look back and say, do you align with your values, and where are you going? I think everything that you said is so relevant to kind of who you were before COVID. And now, take those moments to look about who you are as a company, making sure that you're aligned with your people and compassionate, and you're particularly aligned with your values, because that's what holds people together, right?
Yeah. Well, and so that I love that, because there is a perfect example. I just thought about an example as you were saying that. We are trying to, obviously, at my day job, keep all of our employees working. We are an essential business, and therefore we have been able to remain open, but people are also facing the challenges of childcare and all of those other things. And except for our lease and our office staff, our maintenance and housekeeping staff, we can't do anything remotely. So when you create an environment of trust and care and compassion, and that's what you promote within your organization, your people are going to be open to being transparent with you about what their current situation is. And so we have an employee who has a severely autistic child, and she was not able to secure childcare for this child, for her to be able to physically come in to work. And this poor woman was just stressed out of her mind, trying to source what was going on. And thankfully, finally, she came to us and we said, what can you do? What days can you secure childcare? We made an arrangement for her. She's working 1 week on and 1 week off. And we are taking care of her, because this is not the time where anyone needs to be stressed out about, is my boss going to get mad if I tell them that I don't have childcare for my child, right? This is not the time where people need to be worried about that. This is the time where people need to say, you know what? I work for a company who will understand this situation, and I don't have to make up a story. I don't have to lie about my situation. I don't have to tell them I have a flat tire. I can just say, you know what? I overslept. I couldn't come into work today. Or in this particular more serious case, saying, hey, I don't know what to do. I've went through every possible source, and I just don't have anyone who can care for my child on this. And so she started working 2 days on and so on and so forth. And we made a special arrangement for her. And then you start looking at the human factor more than at the policy factor of it. And that's where us HR professionals need to be always with that mentality of, if we put people first, we can get very creative in how we can make things happen, and help our people not be so stressed out, adding more stress to their book when they're already stressed out about a million other things.
Well, you just gave me chills. As a dad of 2 autistic children here at home, I can tell you it is very challenging, the whole homeschooling thing, because schools aren't really set up to do homeschooling for special needs children.
No.
Neurotypical kids, yes, but it's much harder. And so for parents who can't be home, there's really very, very limited childcare options.
Yeah.
So, wow, you guys really get it. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, it's I think the bottom line is, if we put people first, everything plays out the best way that you can. And, it's not a perfect rainbow day. Things are crazy and people are emotional, and people sometimes are overreacting to situations. And we have people who are not reasonable and all of that, and that's okay. But if you always go into whatever you do every day with the mentality that I'm always going to put people first, then things will work out in the end.
So where can people find out more about CultureConnext? How can they find out more about this fantastic conference? And also, I think we want to know, how did you manage to land Johnny Taylor as a keynote in your brand new company?
I still don't know how that happened. It was God. I'll share this story because I hope to listen to this one day, and I'm still very humbled that this happened. So I'm a huge follower of Charm, and just in general, Johnny Taylor. I admire him so much because I can very much relate to the messages that he puts out there, and I could feel that sense of personal belief. And so he had posted a video about his drive that getting people back to work and the untapped talent work that he's been doing in terms of incarcerated workers coming back into the workforce and all the work that he was doing around that. And so you posted a video about that. And it was personal to me because I've been trying to think of like, how can we help people that otherwise don't have a chance to get a job, right? Whether it's formerly incarcerated, some sort of background problem, lack of education or whatever, right? The me of 20 years ago, how can we help this person still have an opportunity to make it a decent living? And so when I saw that video, it just really touched me, and I commented on it, and I said, oh my gosh, this is such an inspiring video. This is what I'm doing. I'm having this conference and would love to have a topic around this, this discussion at my conference. And he responded to it, saying, I would love to hear more about your conference. And then he sent me a private message and said, can we talk about this a little more? And I was just like, I was thinking it's like probably somebody from his team or something like that. And no, it was him responding, and we started, he sent me his email address and we started emailing back and forth, and I got on a call, and I just share my passion. And I said, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And I would be extremely humbled if you were able to be a part of it. And he's like, can anybody tell you no? So it was very super exciting. We've been working on a couple of things. I had the opportunity to meet with him in person in March, just a week before things got crazy. And we're working together on, just culture, how do we provide more culture education out in the world? And so, that was an incredible long shot that I just sent the message. I wasn't even expecting a response. I was just sharing my thoughts, and it just worked out for the best.
It's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Gang, any other questions for Lina?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Lina Graves, President, CEO of CultureConnext. And what's the name of the conference? Is it called CultureConnext?
It's called the Culture Revolution. The Culture Revolution with CultureConnext. The theme of the conference is it starts with the heart, and people can find information about the conference at CultureConnext.com. And also, if people have any questions, they can find me at lina@cultureconnext.com. And then there is also a place on the website where you can subscribe to the page and just receive regular updates or emails related to workplace culture. So if anybody subscribes, they start hearing from us. And then all the information about the speakers and everything that we're doing should be listed on the page.
Lina Graves, President and CEO of CultureConnext. Thank you for joining the Jersey Shore Association of HR second podcast. Thank you so much, and best of luck to you with the conference.
Thank you all for having me. Such a pleasure.
Thank you, Lina.
Thank you.